Happy Easter. And for the rest of you, He is risen. We got a wide group here, and some of you guys had no idea about the second thing. But and for others, if we didn't do the second thing, Easter would not be complete, and you'd be on your car on your way home doing it to each other just to make up for the fact that you're supposed to say that. So, good to have you here today. Before I get started, I want to give you a little thing, because Barry was talking about the app that we have. Also, if you download the app, which you don't have to do right this second, you can actually, all the notes that I have, they're going to be on the screen, that are on your bulletins, they'll be on the app, too. You can just push a button and they're there. But don't worry, everything will be on the screen today. So, but for future reference, that's a cool way to sort of keep up with what's going on in the sermon. So, anyway, it's Easter, and there are two major Christian holidays, Christmas and Easter, and let's be honest, Christmas wins, right? I mean, we don't want to admit that, but Christmas, as far as like what you get to do, like for instance, at Christmas I get gifts. And at Easter, I get eggs. And, when it comes to music, Christmas, December 1st, there are radio stations that switch, and all they do is play Christmas carols, Christmas music for the entire month. Did anybody have a station near them? Or do you have a Spotify station that played nothing but Easter music from March? No, just not nearly as much. And in the TV shows and the movies and the specials, it's crazy. I mean, the Hallmark Channel manages to play Christmas movies with the exact same plot for the entire month. And there's so many Christmas movies that we have subgenres within Christmas movies. And one of the big subgenres is the whole concept of somebody's going to save Christmas. I think there was a movie called Saving Christmas, and there was the Christmas Without a Santa Claus, and there was How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And then if Tim Allen doesn't put on the suit, there's no Christmas this year, right? Matter of fact, I think almost every one of the Hallmark movies has a subplot of we're saving Christmas, at least for this community. Now, here's the irony of that. When it comes to Christmas, there was never any doubt. God had been planning to send His Son in Jesus Christ to the earth for thousands of years. He had it all lined up. It was all going. It went just exactly the way He laid it out forever. But did you know there almost wasn't Easter? Easter's the one that almost didn't happen. Easter's the one that was iffy. Easter's the one that was on the edge of, if you look at the way God worked everything out, I mean, you watch, if you're reading the Gospels, the books about Jesus in the Bible, you'll see everything is leading up to this whole crucifixion thing, and then they get there, and there's almost an oops. There really is. It's really close. We'll look at it? Yeah, we'll look at it. Okay? So Jesus is we'll go straight to Jesus on the cross. And He's on the cross, knowing that everything had now been finished, and so that Scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, I'm thirsty. A jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on a stalk of a hyssop plant, lifted it up to Jesus' lips. And when he had received the drink, Jesus said, it is finished. With that, He bowed His head and gave up His spirit, and suddenly we've got a problem. We've got a really big problem. Because 3 days later, Jesus has predicted He will rise from the dead. Do you know what you need 3 days later for there to be a resurrection? An intact body. You need a body. And here's the deal. Romans didn't invent crucifixion, but they perfected it. And they used it to keep the nations, the nation states that they were over, they used it to keep them in line. So crucifixion wasn't about executing an individual. It was about communicating to the nation there, don't be messing with us. Matter of fact, you've seen probably pictures of the cross and the three crosses and how they're really, really high. Probably not. They were probably just a few feet off the ground because they wanted you to see it. And just this little bit of gross for just I was trying to meet. The Romans usually allowed the crucified to rot on the cross. They just left them there till there was nothing left. That's what they did in most places. Now, the Jews had all kinds of stuff about hygiene and how you cared for bodies. So in order to keep peace in Jerusalem, they made sort of an agreement with them. And the agreement was the Jews had received permission to take the people down from the cross and place them in a common grave outside the city. So when someone died on a cross, sometimes it would take days, but in this case, with all that's going on, they get them all off at the same time. There's a plan. And the plan is the Roman soldiers are going to take the body off the cross, go out to the outside skirts of town to a pit, most likely, and throw the body in the pit. See a problem? Because thief 1, into the pit. Jesus, into the pit. Thief 2, into the pit. And because they probably didn't dig a brand new pit for every crucifixion, because, like I said, Romans liked crucifixions, at best they'd have gone out and sprinkled a little layer of dirt on top of that. Now, what's going to happen? This is gross. Got to think about it just a little bit. What happens to a body on the outskirts of town with just a little layer of dirt on it? Okay, stop thinking about it now, because you go to gross zone really, really fast. That's why, by the way, you picture, the tomb where Jesus is. You picture all the tombs from that era. They're always like there's this cave that they've hollowed out in the side of the mountain, and you notice Jesus wasn't the one who they didn't invent the rock they put in front of it. They didn't invent that for Jesus. They invented that because they would take the body, they'd not embalm it, they put stuff with it, spices, put it in the tomb, and they would roll the stone and lock it in place to keep out the animals and a lot of the bugs. Right? And what they normally did, they would lock the body in, and the grave would be a cave with some shelves, and they'd lay the body on the shelf, and then about a year or two later, they would come back, move the stone, and they'd have a box made of rock. And they'd go in, and they'd gather the bones that were left, put them in the box, and put the box on a shelf. And so they would bury an entire family in this cave. And that's how they did it. That was the normal way. Except for crucifixion victims, you weren't allowed to get the body. You weren't allowed. I mean, they are in the process of demeaning this person. They are saying, they don't want you to think well of this person. So if the family shows up to get the body, the answer is, it's in the hole. You can come back in a year or two. We've got a problem here. And even if, let's just even if it for a second. Where's Jesus from? Where does he live right this moment? He lives primarily in Galilee. That's a good little ways off. Where do all his disciples live? Everywhere except Jerusalem. And let's just say that Peter regains all of his courage, and he gets John and a couple other disciples, and they go up and ask for the body, and for some reason, the authorities say, okay, yeah, you can have it. What now? What do you do with it? It's not like you can call, Camel Uber and say, hey, would you schlep this body up to Galilee for us? If they got it, they have nothing they can do with it. See what I mean? We're this close to no resurrection because we're this close to no body come Easter. So let's just keep reading because I'm all tense. Then Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now, you Bible scholars who've read the Gospels, you've read all of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you've been reading along in your Gospel, what do you know about Joseph of Arimathea when you hit his name in the Gospels? He's in all 4 Gospels right here. What do you know before that? Nothing. You've never heard of this man. This is the first time his name appears in the Bible, and by the way, this is the last time his name appears in the Bible. But Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. We'll see why he's able to pull that off in a minute. Now, Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, because he feared the Jewish leaders. He's a chicken Christian. Right? He's the one who works really hard during the week to make sure nobody at his job knows he's a Christian. That's what he's doing. He's been doing it for a good while now. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Now, we know a little bit about Nicodemus, because if you're a Bible person, you know that in John chapter 3, Nicodemus shows up at night. He sneaks in to see Jesus. He says, "Can we meet at night where nobody can see us?" Okay, they meet at night, and they have this back and forth questioning. Jesus says all kinds of cool things in John chapter 3. But at the end of it, you know what Nicodemus does? We have no idea. He just leaves. He asks Jesus all kinds of questions, and he doesn't like, "Oh, this is great. I'm going to be a follower of Jesus now." No, he just disappears again. Is that the Amber Alert again? Sorry. Don't mess with kids on Easter. Did not get that rule? So, in John 7, we move forward to Sanhedrin's meeting, and they're talking about Jesus. And Nicodemus, he doesn't defend Jesus, but he tries to find a loophole. Says, okay, well, if this is the case, shouldn't we? He doesn't defend him at all. But that's all we know about him. He shows up for Jesus, asks questions. A little bit later, he defends him, but he never stands up. And to give you some background on Joseph of Arimathea, he's in the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin are like 71 of the most powerful religious leaders in Judea, so he's powerful. We also know, I keep hitting the wrong button on this one. Everything moves on me, sorry. He's also rich because he owns a tomb in prime real estate, and he paid somebody to carve it out. Okay? He's probably rich and probably new money. Okay? And is he a follower of Jesus? That's a good question. He never left anywhere to follow Jesus. Said we just read Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly because he feared the Jewish leaders. So he's and earlier in the Gospel of John, John had said pretty nasty things about people like him. In John chapter 12, many people did believe in Jesus, however, including some of the Jewish leaders. But they wouldn't admit it for fear the Pharisees would expel them from the synagogue, for they loved human praise more than the praise of God. Ooh. Let me give you a little insight on how church ministry works. Let's say, just for example, that we were wanting to start a brand new ministry. We had something we're getting ready to do. We want to do something brand new. We're looking for a leader. You know who we're not looking at? Joe and Nick. They are not on our list. These people, because they're like the ninja Christians, right? Or they sort of sneak in and they sneak out and you never actually see them. It's kind of like they always think they're visiting a national park. You know, the national park says, leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but memories. That's pretty much how it worked for these guys, right? And I'll be honest, as a preacher, as a pastor, there are times I might talk down about these guys. I might say, "Oh, this is what you don't want to be. This is what you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be the one who's moving slowly. You need to be all out committed." Is this right? All out committed for Jesus starting. You got to get louder now. But we need to understand something. This is really, really, really important. Is these guys teach us, one thing they teach us is that faith is a process. We have this idea that a lot of times that Christians are kind of, the real, the good Christians, the ones that, you look up to, Christians, they're kind of just born that way. But it's kind of like not that way at all. It's kind of like if you see somebody, like an athlete on television, and they're just like ripped in every conceivable direction. They know how to move. Do you know that they weren't born that way? Let me tell you how they were born. They weighed about 8 pounds. And if they were good, they were kind of chunky. They were not athletic looking. Anybody have a kid that's athletic looking at age 1? No. They end up looking, they basically, I still look that way, pale, the belly sticking out. That's sort of how we all start there, and then genetics are part of it for physical stuff. But a lot of it is they work out and they try and they develop and they fail and they do good and they do bad and they have good games and they have bad games. And you can watch if you're a fan of college basketball, and you'll see your freshman players come out and they do some of the dumbest things ever. First half of that freshman season, you're like, oh, get them off the court. But if they keep working, when they're farther along, suddenly they're in the NCAA tournament, and they're doing really, really well because they just kept processing. And we need to understand that faith is a process. And that process doesn't go at the speed that I pick for it. It doesn't go at the speed you pick for it. You might have somebody, let's say if you're a committed Christian and you've got somebody in your family who's just, crawling, and you're all upset. Well, you know what? There are times when crawling's the right thing. My fifth grandchild is a year old. Yes, I have 5 grandchildren. No, I don't look that old. The fifth one's crawling. No one's mad at her for it. Nobody's going, why aren't you walking? Well, because I just turned 1. I'm pulling up. I'm taking a step or two. Not quite to the walking zone yet, right? Because that's the stage. And with people, as we grow in the faith, it's a process. And some people are still a little bit, undercover Christian-y. You're not quite ready to tell everybody at work that you're a follower of Christ, or you're not quite ready to be in church every week. You're not quite ready for that's okay. As long as the process is moving, as long as there's steps, as long as things are going. Now, Nicodemus and Joseph, Nick and Joe, they get there, right? I mean, it says here that Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, which means nothing to you, I know, right now. About 75 pounds. 75 pounds. Told you they took some risks. 75 pounds. Some of you were here a few weeks ago. I did a message on a woman who anointed Jesus with some perfume, right? And we pointed out at that point that the perfume she used was worth about a year's wages. Everybody got upset because it was so extravagant to pour a year's wages worth of perfume on Jesus. Nicodemus brought 100 years' wages and wrapped Jesus' body in it. That's what you did for kings. Nicodemus is treating him like a king. So while Nicodemus took a while to get there, he got there. While Joseph of Arimathea took a while to get there, he got there. Okay? So they took him and they buried him, stripped linen, Jewish customs. But here's something I need to say, because sometimes people like me can mess this up. Because my job is to get you to move toward Jesus. That's my job. If you're not a believer, my job is to get you to move toward Jesus. If you've been a Christian for 50 years, my job is to get you to move closer to Jesus. That's my job. That should be written above my door. Steve helps you move toward Jesus. That's what I'm here for. Okay? And sometimes I can mess up, and I can start out talking about how you need to make sacrifices and do the big things. But really, faith doesn't normally start with sacrifice. It starts with needs. Faith starts with the needs we have. Earlier in Matthew, Jesus is talking, and this is before he tells them, take up your cross and follow me. Before he does all this stuff, Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Anyone weary? Anybody carrying heavy burdens? Anybody want a nap? By the way, that's my definition of an adult. An adult is someone who wants to take a nap. And in case you're curious, once you hit that stage, you never leave it. Okay, you're going to spend the rest of your life wishing you were currently taking a nap. Because this is a world that is weary. It makes us weary. It's heavy. Is life heavy? Life's heavy. And what we need is rest and peace in that. And Jesus says, I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, which is a farming term. Let me teach you. Let me teach you. Let me instruct you. Let me guide you. Let me direct you. Because I'm humble, Jesus says, and gentle at heart, and you will find for your... Oh, that's the best kind right there. Because, a nap, physical nap, doesn't always really help that much. I still wake up and all the stuff's still there. And Jesus says, I'm bringing you rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. And that's what I still need. That's what I still want. We never get past the point where we outgrow this part of faith. The faith which is about the needs that are very real in our lives. Augustine said, our heart is restless until it finds its rest in God. And some of you don't have a relationship with Jesus, and you're looking for that rest that only comes from God. That only comes from Jesus Christ. And we'll help you look. But I'll tell you where we're going to end up at. Because this rest only comes from Jesus. Now, I showed you this earlier, but I'm going to just go ahead and bring it up. Faith can include sacrifice and risks. They're not out of the question. I mean, like I said, Nicodemus spent a literal fortune, 100 years' wages. I'm not doing the math in my head, but that's a lot of money. I don't care what you do for a living. 100 years' wages is a lot of money. Okay? And did Joseph take risks? Did Joseph when he went to Pilate? Yeah. Because Joseph could not know how Pilate would feel until he approached him. Because what was Jesus being crucified for? You know the official charge? Treason. Do you know how governors, how do they feel about treason? Especially if you're the governor of a region that is under the authority of Rome, and what's Rome's favorite way to deal with people who get in the way? Crucifixion. Okay? It is not out of the question that when Joseph goes to Pilate, the governor, and says, can I have the body of Jesus? It is not out of the question if the governor is the right amount of paranoid to say, why do you want the body? Now that we got him off the cross, why don't we put you on it? That is not at all out of the question, because it was very important to maintain order. As Craig Keener finishes, mere association with one condemned for treason could lead to a person's execution under paranoid rulers. And that's just the legal people. What about the religious folk? Because he was part of the Sanhedrin. He's part of the official who's who of religious folk in Jerusalem. What do you think they're going to do? How long do you think it took them to vote him out? Do you think they voted that day, or do you think they waited till Monday? And by the way, we said he's probably new money. Because he bought a brand new place, dug a brand new tomb. That's probably new money. He's probably trading in something. He's probably a businessman. How many accounts do you think he lost for burying Jesus? Whoa. See, sometimes faith can lead to risk, and it can lead to sacrifice. I think frequently faith can, to be totally honest with you, straight up, faith can lead to sacrifice, faith can lead to risk. But that's not the only thing in there. Okay? It includes risk and sacrifice. But if we keep reading, we're not going to read this part of the story today. But Jesus, we already know he's going to rise from the dead, right? You got that? Okay, so I don't want to spoil it, but that's what's happening. So he rises from the dead, and we're just going to move up to the night. He rises from the dead, and he appears to Mary, but he hides from the disciples. Okay, the disciples are in the right place, and he doesn't appear to them. Peter and John are in the tomb, and Jesus is over here talking to Mary and doesn't let Peter and John see him. And then that evening, the 10 of the disciples are meeting in a room going, what's going on? Because Mary says she saw him. These two guys, they say they saw him. There are people who say they saw him. What's going on? And Jesus just appears in the room. Says, told you I was going to rise. And they go, wee-hee, and then he disappears. That's a paraphrase. And then the guy who missed the meeting, I don't know, his mom had something for him to do or something, I don't know, he didn't make the meeting. And Thomas comes to meet with him again, and they say, he's risen, we saw him. He goes, I'm not buying it. You've heard Doubting Thomas, right? This is where it came from. It came from a guy named Thomas, and Thomas is like, no, until I see the marks where they drove the nails in, until I see the hole in the side where they poked the spear, I'm not buying that Jesus rose from the dead. Now, how do you handle doubt? How do you handle people who doubt? I'll tell you how Jesus handled him. Jesus went out of his way to show himself to Thomas. He came back like a week later and said, here I am. Here's this hole, here's this hole, here's this hole. So he went out of his way to show himself to Doubting Thomas, and he didn't show up to kick him off the team. He showed up to help him overcome his doubt, because faith can include sacrifice and risk, but it also can include doubt. Did you know that? A lot of us get this idea that doubt is the opposite of faith. No, faith, you ready for this? Faith requires doubt. If there is no doubt, there is no faith. You're going, okay. In the Bible, it says that when we see Jesus face to face, when the end times come and we are in the presence of Jesus Christ, our faith will become sight. The opposite of faith is sight. Because once you see it, you don't need faith anymore. I don't know how many years ago it was, there was a bunch of tornadoes came through this area. It was on the Saturday before Palm Sunday. It was that Saturday. And we were doing a cleanup here at the church on the Saturday before Palm Sunday. And a whole bunch of tornadoes came through. One of them took out the Lowe's up in Sanford, flattened it. Now, interesting trivia point, one of my daughters was on her way to Lowe's as pick up stuff for the cleanup when the tornadoes hit. Now, did I think she's probably okay? Yeah, I've got faith. You know how long I had faith? Until I saw her. And once I saw her and I held her, I didn't have faith anymore. I had certainty. I had sight. See, doubt's part of faith. If you're not 100% sure that everything is exactly the way Jesus wants it to be, you're welcome to the club. You're called human. Matter of fact, I say this once in a while. I mean, does everything make sense to me as far as making it fit into the Christian picture? No, I got stuff. I mean, I'm going to wait a little bit, but I plan to have coffee with Jesus at some point. Just not angrily, but I have questions. I'm figuring, I'm not good. I don't have to have a meeting in his office, but just coffee. I'll order a latte. I assume he'll order water and turn it into wine, but it's going to take a minute. Because there's stuff I don't understand. There's stuff God does I don't understand. There's stuff that happens in the world I don't understand. There's all these things. Why did this happen this way? Why did this happen in my life instead of this? And I'm not upset about it. I don't understand. I have doubt. It's as normal as anything, and it's part of your faith. So if you have doubt, don't go, that's how it works. Okay? Remember Thomas, the one who doubted, and Jesus goes out of his way to say, don't worry, you're still on the team. You're still one of mine. Okay, now, so we've got kind of a statute of faith. Faith starts when we recognize our need for something, for peace and hope. And then Jesus comes into our lives and we start to have that faith that we need. And sometimes it leads to some sacrifice, and it leads to changes in our lives, and we are moved. But here's the important part for me. You may have noticed, I don't know if you pay attention, because you come here today, and I'm not opposed to I don't think these things are wrong, but you notice we didn't do an Easter egg hunt, and we didn't do a special play, and we didn't do all these things. And it's not, do you notice what we're doing instead? For Easter, we're doing 100 days of giving, because there's nothing wrong with I don't want to be about Easter egg hunts. I don't want to be about dressing up certain ways. That's not what I want us to be about, because when we understand the faith concept, it connects us to something bigger. Connects us to something bigger. than we are. And we don't even have to know exactly what it was. Joe and Nick, they didn't know what they were doing. They're just burying a body for someone that they respected, and they've stepped up to do it. But they were preparing for the biggest event ever. They were just responding in the faith that they had. But it tied them to something bigger. Now this is cool. Let's read. We're just working our way through this in John 19. Let's just keep reading a little bit because I want you to see something really subtle. If you blink, you'll miss it. It said, at the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden. And in the garden, a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. We know from the other Gospels, it's Joseph of Arimathea's tomb. It's brand new. It's for the family. Nobody's been in it yet. But because the Jewish day of preparation, it was the Jewish day of preparation. And since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. Now, let's move over to Luke because I like how Luke does the next section. It says, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. Now you're going, wait a second, Nicodemus took 75 pounds. Why are they taking spices to the tomb? Have you ever seen a woman trust a man to get anything right? Right. Somebody's got to check on this work. Right? I'm sure. So anyway, they go to the tomb. And they found the stone is rolled away from the tomb. But when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. And while they were wondering about this, suddenly two men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. And in their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. Amen. Hallelujah. Way cool. But let me show you one little, like I said, if you blinked, you missed it. It says the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden. Garden. Seems to me there are other prominent gardens in the Bible. Can you think of a prominent garden in the Bible? Anything come up? If I say garden in the Bible, does anything come to mind? Garden of Eden, right? Well, what happened there? That's where humanity rejected God. That's where we got into the whole mess to start with, is because God places humanity in a perfect place, and we reject God and we reject His standards, and there's a curse and there's all kinds of problems, all because of that. So do you think it's accidental that Jesus chose to rise from the dead in a garden? I don't think so. Because what we're doing is He's tying it into the whole big story of what God's been up to. I like to use this example concept because, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's creation. He makes creation, and He looks at it and says it's very good. And generally speaking, do you look out on creation and say very good? Especially where the peoples are at? No, you look out into creation and go, what a mess. Right? That's because of the fall. God creates the heavens and the earth and the people screw up, and now it's fallen, and we have earthquakes and tornadoes, and I don't want to name names, people that you know who are out there that really, you go, why, God, did you let that person ever show up? Right? You got all that, and so you got the fall, but as soon as the fall happens, God begins planning. Like I said earlier, that the crucifixion and the Christmas were both God's plan from eternity. He was planning from the moment. I'm going to get this to Bethlehem, and I'm going to take that baby from Bethlehem to Jerusalem to a cross. It's been in God's plan forever, basically, right? So creation, fall, redemption, and after Jesus rises from the dead, and after He ascends back to heaven, and even while He's here living, it becomes about restoration. It's about turning the universe back to very good. And He leaves us here to be part of the process of restoring the universe back to being very good. And as a church, our job is to help as best we can. We can't get it done right until Jesus comes back, but we can be making some areas good. We can be making some areas better. Right? We're doing the 100 Days of Giving, and I'm going to brag on our church because we're not doing all weird stuff. We're saying, how do we help make the universe that God created better? How do we get it closer? How do we make it so? Because God doesn't like poverty. He doesn't like people who can't eat. God is wounded by that. So we're going, how do we make it so there are fewer hungry people around here? I know we'll give food and money to a place that actually does that. It's not part of our church. They're not directly associated with our church. We have some people on the board, but that is not our ministry. That is somebody else's, but they're doing an amazing job, so we're going to give them food. And it's a long story. That's a great story, how we ended up in Cambodia. But we found out about this thing in Cambodia through some people being there, and we're over there going, man, there is so much. I went the first time, and I'm sitting there, and this is just an illustration. This is just one of the things that I remember so vividly. I was in a tuk-tuk, which is a little wagon behind a moped, and we're down, and it's like a 6-lane highway, but it's downtown. So there's not traffic is moving like this, right? And there's 4 of us from the church in this tuk-tuk, and we're all looking this way for some reason, and then we turn back because the little girl gets our attention. There's about a I don't know, 10, 12-year-old girl, is that about right? About 10, 12-year-old girl. And she's got like a 4, 5, 6-year-old beside her, and she's holding a baby, 6, 8 months baby, and the baby is drugged. They have knocked this baby out so they can beg. And I'm in the cart, and I don't know who screamed when we turned. Maybe all of us. It's like, this is not good. And you're downtown. Barry's talking about that. You go into the grassy area near something, and you do the stuff with the kids. And there's these little tiny kids running around all over the place. And some are homeless, and some are just, this is what they do for daycare while mom is at work, is they just turn them loose on the streets. And there are these 40-some-year-old men walking around taking pictures. This is not good. This is so not good. And so we say, how can we make it a little bit good? Our very first trip, some of our people were able to get some pictures, and we were able to turn that in, and a predator was actually arrested because we were there. And every time we go back and every time we send them money, we're trying to make that little area of Phnom Penh closer to good. Because it's about restoration. We are in the restoration business. And so when you become a Christian, you're not becoming churchy. I'm not a big fan of churchy. I am a really big fan of helping people become all God created them to be. And I'm a really, really big fan of doing things that matter. So let's rewind a second. We've got one of the most important things ever to be done. The thing that saved Easter. And we've got the last 2 people any church pastor would ever choose handling the job. Because we look on the outside appearance and God looks at the heart and he sees the process he's been working in these people's lives. And some of us, some of you, you're struggling for purpose, you're struggling for meaning. When I read this thing about come to me all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I'll give you rest, and I saw some of your faces. I saw your faces when you heard that verse. And I saw both the weary, it's an interesting thing because I could see the weariness because you kind of shrunk. Because you just got reminded how weary it is. And then I said, I'll give you rest. And you grew back just a little bit. And some of you are here, and you don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And we are about reaching the lost, the people who've wandered away from God, and helping the least, the people who need a touch, who need us to help the universe become good. And one of the things we do to help reach the lost, the people who've lost means you're not where you're supposed to be, and spiritually lost, the people who just strayed away from where God wants them to be. Every week, at some point toward the end of the service here, me or one of the worship team members will generally either talk about or hold up a blue bag. Now, we spend a lot of marketing work on this. What could we call this blue bag? We came up with blue bag. We hold up a blue bag, and here's I'll say this every week. Somebody will say this every week. If you're interested in talking to somebody about having a relationship with Jesus Christ, what we ask you to do at the end of the service, there's blue bags here, there's blue bags here, there's blue bags back there, there's blue bags there. There's only one blue bag over there because in first service somebody took the other one, and after they took the bag, one of our members sat down with them, took about 10 minutes, unpacked the bag with them, and showed them how they could have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And if after the service you'd like to talk to somebody about that, we encourage you, just grab a blue bag. If today's the day, if you're ready to have that serious conversation about a relationship with Christ, today's the day. And then you say, but Steve, I'm not ready today, but I'm kind of curious now. I don't know, there's something I'm curious about this. What we ask you to do if you're not ready, but you're not sure, you want to come back next week. You know what we're going to do next week on Sunday? The exact same thing we did today. Exactly. I mean, we're going to have the worship team's going to do about 3 songs. Then one of our pastors will come out and do a talk about what we believe in and what counts for us as a church. And there'll be a little video that plays while we move the stuff around. So the speaker come out and talk for a little while. And then afterwards, normally we do 1 song. Today we're doing 2 because it's Easter. That's the only thing we're changing. We're doing 2 songs after I talk. And at the end of whoever's speaking, when they're into the sermon, either they or somebody in the worship team will reach over and they'll grab a blue bag and say, are you ready this week? And if you're not ready this week, we're here every week. This is what we do. Because we want you to have that relationship with Christ. We are committed to it. We're passionate about it. We build everything on Sunday morning with an eye toward the person who is far from God. And if you're far from God and don't want to be that way, we're here to guide. We're here to help. Not because we're better, but some of us are a little farther along the path than others. Okay? And it could be that you're somewhere on the path and you need to take another step. Maybe you've slipped back with all the stuff that's been going on, COVID and everything else. You kind of slipped a little bit and you need to take another step. Every week I want you to take a step toward Jesus. If you're ready to take a step this week, that's cool. If you haven't been baptized, just let us know. We'd be glad to baptize. We try to do baptisms every month. If you just want to pray about what's going on in your life, there's a cross in the corner. During the next song, you can just walk over there and pray. You can kneel, you can stand, just talk to God about whatever it is. If you want to talk with somebody, we've got a person over there on that side of the room, probably be somewhere on this side later, who would love to pray with you about whatever you want to pray about. If you want to take communion to remember all Jesus has done for you, there's a communion station here, and there's one here. But next time you're feeling unworthy, next time you're thinking that, Christianity's not for me because I'm not living up to some special standard. Next time any of that stuff's going through, next time the doubt gets in, so I shouldn't be doubting. Remember 2 people. Remember Joseph of Arimathea. Remember Nicodemus. The 2 people that weren't anybody's first-round draft picks for being good Christians. And remember that God used them at one of the most crucial stages in his entire plan for all of history. And their path led them where God wanted them to be, and their path made them ready for what he wanted to do through them. So God wants to do bigger things in you if you just keep following the path. Let's pray. Father, thank you for Easter. Thank you for the fact that Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea stepped up and took that body, took the big risk, played the big cost. Thank you for the fact that while they hadn't been ready before, they were ready then. And Father, for the people here today who don't have a relationship with you, I pray that you would keep moving them toward yourself. Help them as they understand they are weary with heavy burdens, that you are the one who brings rest. If they're ready today to take a blue bag, help them to do it. If they just need to start coming back and listening to the teaching some more, help them to do that. Father, forgive us who can be judgmental. Forgive us when we look down on other people for not measuring up to our standards. Help us to remember that Thomas didn't live up to anybody's standards, and you loved him and restored him. And Father, if there's anyone here who feels they need to be restored today, help me either as we sing this song, just where they're standing, to recommit to you. If they need to go to the cross and recommit to you, they need to take communion and recommit to you. I pray that you would do that in many lives today and that you would be glorified. It's in Jesus' name I pray.